Hello and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 3 Reload podcast where we play Persona 3 Reload in real time along with the in-game calendar. You held up your hand, my co-host, who I will name soon, and I was worried I said the wrong number, but now you're just, I think, summoning a demon? Who's to say? Anyway, I'm Jonathon Dornbush.
I'm making an R.
Oh, okay. And my co-host, who may be doing something we shouldn't put on camera, is Tom Marks. Tom, how are you doing?
It was bad. It was a bad ad lib.
It's fine. I'm gonna have to blur all of that, and we'll.
Yeah. Maybe I was just doing some Naruto jutsu stuff. You don't know.
I really don't, because I've never actually seen Naruto. Not even in an episode. And there's a lot of them, so you would think I've probably had a chance to watch an episode.
I watched the first few arcs of that show and then gave up a long time ago.
There's 1,000, right?
There's a lot.
Okay. Well, that's for another podcast. Today, we're talking
watching Naruto in real time.
Day by day. I mean, yeah, if you just did it along with how long it takes them in the show to do, probably wouldn't be too hard.
That'd actually be really funny. Like, this is so tangent at the beginning, but that'd be really funny to do with anime, because a lot of animes have, 3-year jumps in the middle of them, so you just have to take a break from the show for a couple of years.
But then there are also, arcs that all take place in one day. So you would do 6 episodes for one day, and it's like, well, we'll see you guys in 2027. All right. Luckily, we don't have that problem on this show because there are not too crazy a time skip to deal with, at least so far. We are this week covering the days of July 27th through August 3rd, which includes some free time, some story updates. We're going to dive into the next bout of Tartarus, so I guess if you haven't gone through Tartarus, spoiler warning there, we're going to talk about it. We are also going to, of course, talk about the thrilling action of the track meet that we all were anticipating and waiting for. And if we have time, chat about our good boy, Miyamoto. We'll see how it goes. We do, of course, have so much to get to this week, even though it's kind of a quick week. I think there's a lot of fun story and character details we can jump into and such. But before we do, we, of course, want to start things off with our Confidant call-out. This is a huge thank you and a show of love and support for everyone out there on the Patreon who's subscribed at the Palace Ruler tier for helping to make the show happen and for showing your support to us. So a huge thank you, and our wonderful honor to be able to shout y'all out includes Akechi as a Jelly Bean, Astral Clock Tower, Brody S., Cameron C., Claudia R., Dallas, Damon, Dan F., Danimal Lover 01, Default Titus, Dexter, Goro Akechi, Keegan H., Michael V., Philip S., Programmer Sid, Sam K., Sarah M., Shade, Willie Wang Wang, and Zachary L. Thank you all so much for supporting us over at the Palace Ruler tier, and thank you to everyone who is subscribing over at the Patreon, helping to make the show happen. If you would like to do that as well, you can head on over to patreon.com/takeyourtime, get episodes early, ad-free, some bonus episodes. We're figuring out our new one soon, but you have a few already stockpiled over there to listen to as well. And we appreciate all the love and support and the wonderful community that's sprung up there. Of course,
we'll probably be posting the poll for the next bonus episode in the next week or so, right? Roughly.
No, we decided we're doing Naruto episode by episode.
Excuse me. And then the actual episode will come out closer to the middle of the month again.
Yes, that is the plan and the hope. Moving on from there, though, Tom, we have a pop quiz from last week that, if you want to get the answer to, you had to have been paying attention during the beach trip. So why don't you recap what it was, and we'll dive in.
So my question was, Akihiko is very adorably poo-bearing his outfit for the beach trip by wearing a Speedo and then a long white t-shirt. And the long white t-shirt says some stuff on the front and back. And I asked, what does it say? Pretty simple. Did people get anything?
We got a couple answers. I do want to say that I remembered the SOS, clear and bright as day. So that was where my head was at. Yeah. There is a little bit of extra text, though, to it. Correct?
There is.
Okay. So there is extra text. Why don't you tell us what it is, and I'll tell you if anyone got it correct.
So it says, SOS, like you said, kind of in an emblem sort of style, and then right above it, though, it says scuba diving. So it's like a scuba diving company called SOS, maybe? I don't know.
Which Astral Clock Tower did get correct in full.
Yeah. Nice.
I just had that, and then Kuya Ruddick, I'm going to go for, on YouTube also got it correct in full. But yeah, I remember that SOS like so clear as day in my head, but I couldn't remember what the other text was. So congrats to the two of you.
Partial credit. And as a reminder, for questions like this, I would always appreciate guesses that are just very knowingly wrong, because they're very fun. They're very fun.
Yeah, after we got some very good ones for the school song, I would love to hear what everyone thinks. Whenever you don't have a guess, just give us your best random shot in the dark. We'll take it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you. I can't wait to see what delight you have for us at the end of this week's episode. But before we get there, I did want to jump in just also with a few comments from last week, just because we had a lot of story to discuss and a lot of people chimed in for some things. So I want to just mention a few. Moral Quandary mentioned, I'm playing through Persona 3 Reload with the pod, and I also hit Charm level 5 after acing exams. I love it.
Rigged. It's rigged.
It's a fake game. Fun extra fact for Jonathon, level 5 charm is labeled popular, so we all literally got popular by acing exams, which is a thing that also definitely happened to me in high school. Me too, Moral Quandary. I think we can all say everyone who got an A on their exams in high school, top of the class. Anyway, I'm enjoying the continuation of the Yukari Mitsuru one-sided Cold War, but on second playthrough, I'm really enjoying Fuka's quiet charm, similar to how much I loved Haru after a second playthrough. Which I think is fair. It's definitely the like secondary character beat of that triumvirate, and I do think it's done really well, especially on the beach trip.
There's also with games like this where they're so long and you're kind of learning about these characters so much, you can... I think that the big charismatic characters that sort of steal the spotlight are easy to have opinions on very early.
Yes.
Whereas a character like Fuka is, maybe it takes the game, like I'm enjoying her right now, but maybe it takes a little longer, right, to figure out her deal, and then when you go back and replay it, you sort of understand that subtlety already, and you can appreciate it a little differently. Because I agree, the Haru thing is like, Haru I did not appreciate as much in my first playthrough of P5.
Absolutely, same. Very much in the same position. So yeah, it's cool to see, and I agree. I am definitely, I think, picking up a little bit more on Fuka, who doesn't have the spotlight in these conversations, which is nice. Moving on from there, Dan, I know how to say names, had a few comments. They mentioned, if I'm remembering correctly, the Chariot social link is mandatory, but not immediately. You don't have to start it when it first becomes available, but if you haven't started it by like mid or late May, they think, one of the teachers calls you into the faculty office and says that she's worried you're not participating in school, and only then are you forced to start the link, which is really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
I appreciate that. I had no idea. Moving on from there, Dan also mentioned, I enjoy that Miyamoto is the new Kasumi. We'll talk about him next week for sure. It's very much, the Matt Damon on Jimmy Kimmel sort of, and apologies. We'll see how that goes this week. And then also just a fun note, as I guess slight spoilers for anyone who plans to play Persona 3 Portable, but I found this interesting to mention. In the FemC route, Operation Babe Hunt, I guess they changed the name in Reload, happened with only Junpei and Akihiko, as the main character goes on the nature walk with the girls, but it plays out essentially the same. What is extremely funny is Aigis runs away from Akihiko instead of Yu, then finds the main character in the woods and reacts identically to her as she does to the male main character. So when Akihiko and Junpei show up, Aki just goes, oh, so that's her preference. Which, yeah, I guess that describes it away pretty well. And then I did want to bring in just a couple of YouTube comments because these were some fun ones. Just really quickly, Lydia said, hi guys, popping in ahead of listening to the beginning of P3R. I found y'all back in late May and have spent the summer binging through your P5R and Strikers episodes. Super excited to listen to your thoughts on P3. I haven't played the remaster yet, but I did play through P3 Fez way back as a teen. It was my first Megaten game and still has a fond place in my heart. Perhaps I'll be able to catch it up enough to listen to y'all in real time. Hope you hear this eventually, but thanks so much for the kind words and hope you enjoy the show. As we say, I do love always hearing from people who are jumping in wherever they may be, so that's really fun.
Yeah.
And then Hibiscus also said, and I have not verified this because I probably should, but they said they had to ask their husband about the takoyaki octopus. In katakana, the store name says Octopussy, the James Bond female villain, which is incredible if that's an accurate translation. But
I guess that would explain the gun in the cocktail.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah. Because the octopus, does the octopus have a wig? I feel like I looked back and it did have hair.
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does.
Yeah. What a part of the game. I'm never going to be able to forget this now that you brought it up. Anyway, thank you to everyone who wrote in. We do have a couple questions and comments about this week's stuff later to address as well. But before we get there, we of course want to talk about what happens in This Week in Persona, which is July 27th through August 3rd.
Which is a lot of running.
A lot of running, a thing I don't like to do. So we are going to run right through it probably half of the time because for those who have obviously played, the track meet, or the track practice, I should say, doesn't have a lot to it. It is definitely a time waster to keep the story moving.
I feel like I just don't know. I was trying to think from a design perspective, like why they do this, because obviously the gist of the next 6 days, I think it is, you have 6 full days of not having a day activity, and then the track meet, which is the 7th. So you can't hang out with anyone during the day, which means that you have to just sort of, like, you just skip straight to the evening, and there's not even, like, you get little bits of dialogue of being like, oh, wow, you're getting better. Oh, you got second that time. Oh, you're really picking it up, right? But there's not much happens here, and it's always the same sort of static shot of you just running on the track. I feel like this has got to be one of those balance-ish things where they were realizing that summer was throwing off where they wanted you to be in the scheme of social links and stats or something like that, and they just wanted some way to either break it up or I don't know, because I can't really figure out a reason otherwise why they would do this. And to be clear, this is not me complaining. It's just like, it's very funny that the day before this starts, they're like, hey, by the way, there's this thing we hadn't told you about, and you're going to be doing it all week, and you don't get any choice, and you have no agency, and it takes 3 seconds to get through. And it's very abrupt.
It's also, I'm very much with you, because it's not as if any of these stats you have matter or impact this event. I assume we all have the same sort of progression of dialogue where you're not starting out in the best place and then you progress and get better as the week goes on.
Yeah.
Which makes sense there, but it's not as if it's impacted by your charm or something else, or like how leveled up you are. It has nothing to do with all that. So I'm very much with you in that it feels like a thing that is helping to kind of gate the progress, which is interesting though, because I do feel like this game, at least from other people who I've heard speak about it, has a reputation for being kind of hard to finish all the social links in time. So this is a good chunk of time that you could use for that.
I don't know. It's weird, but it's fine. I don't really have strong feelings about the fact that they did this.
Yeah. It's just, it almost feels like here's a way for us to do a time skip that doesn't fully just negate a calendar week.
Right. It is sort of that.
Which I guess helps, because at the end of the day, you do still want the overall meta progression of time to occur, because that impacts character development and the impact of having these events going on for so long, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I get in that sense of not wanting to fully take away from you, but not give you everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have it every day. I think we'll just kind of go through it as we go, because there's also free time and occasionally a couple other story events and things in there to go with. But starting with the first day, July 27th, you have your practice, you get in the rhythm that you're about to have for the next week, and then you have free time after. So what did you do?
Yeah, I gardened with Igus.
Me too.
She was new in the house, and I wanted to do that.
I like that she is confused about how plant emotions work and what they can feel and understand. It's very cute.
Yeah, I was like, you should try talking to them, and so she was just talking to the plants. It's a fun little interaction. I'm liking Igus a lot so far.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna do a check-in with you as the week goes on just to see how you're feeling. Moving on from there, because that's it. That's July 27th. That's all we got. Moving on from there to July 28th, you have your training. This day, it mentioned your time wasn't good. I was like, then why do they have us here? But anyway, yeah, that happens. You move on from there. The shopping network stuff comes if you ordered it. And if not, it, I think, just gets to the evening. So what did you do?
Well, so there's a couple little chatty things, because there's a lot of conversations in the evening, and there's a couple I wanted to pull out. First of all, Fuka brings up the thing, if you talk to her, she brings up the thing that I brought up like weeks ago, which is her being like, wait, so if they were already studying shadows before the dark hour existed, that means that shadows already existed. So how long have they been there, and what's the deal with that? And it's sort of an offhand thing. I'm not expecting them to like answer it, but I'm glad that someone in game also brought it up.
Oh, absolutely. I love that too. I think it's nice to know that the game, I think at many points feels like it is it doesn't feel like the game gets too behind your thought process. It does feel like it keeps pace with you in a really good way.
The other thing I wanted to do is start a recurring segment that is only going to be on this episode. It's just going to recur 3 times.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is, what's the deal with Ken? Because this first one, I like. The first day that he's there, he's sitting on the couch just staring at Akihiko while he cleans his gloves, because he's obsessed with Akihiko. Yeah. And he's eating potato chips. Just going to town on some potato chips while staring at Akihiko.
That's it. Yeah. It's he is also in the ledger on the counter. His name is written perfectly, I believe it says.
Oh, really?
If you go check it, yeah, it's very cute. But
that's nice.
Akihiko doesn't know what to do with it. He's kind of thrown off. It's very cute.
Yeah, Akihiko's very, not uncomfortable, but he just like doesn't know how to behave around a child that like worships him.
Yeah, it's very fun. I think I'm excited for this recurring segment because, as we mentioned, we'll talk about Tartarus at the end, but like slight spoilers. Obviously, you have Aigis as a new party member, and though Ken has been set up as potentially having a persona, he's not a party member. Right. He is just still there. And so all you're getting from him is these little interactions in the evenings.
Yep.
Yeah.
That night, though, I just spent time with Tanaka.
Okay, cool.
Got up to 6.
Nice. I watched a zombie series with Yukari. Which was...
Is that courage?
It upped my charm.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, you know. I mean, hey, everyone on The Walking Dead is pretty charming, so I get it. You know. But it's a funny one. It mentions, I think it's because the game, or the movie series kicks off this conversation about essentially like a character who backstabs another character and how you would react in a situation like that and all that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, you could play it really cool and be charming essentially about it, which is, yeah. That's what I did. Moving on from there, July 29th. Your training. Whoa, hold on now. Someone gives you a little bit of input. Yuko is there.
Yeah.
And you get... I wish this had started from the beginning, because at least it makes it feel like, oh, this is a friend thing. Like it's giving you an insight into a group of your friends, because we've talked about it as the Miyamoto social link, but it is the track team social link. So I do think it is nice to have this be integrated into the wider week. But yeah, she gives a little input on how you're doing, and then you move on. I think it just goes to the evening, right?
It does.
I just have a lot of notes, but yes.
We can finally put taiyaki in the fridge.
Yeah. I double-checked like 3 times the night before because I kept forgetting and having to be like, it's tonight, right? Okay, it's the next night. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any conversations from tonight?
None that I marked this time. I just worked part-time this night. I kind of didn't have a lot to do. There was a couple of these evenings where I just like wasn't quite sure what to do because this paid off, as I discovered later. I was waiting for them to give me people to rescue in Tartarus. I have decided now that I do not like that system. Or more specifically, I don't like that it is super random when they tell you, and they can wait until 3 days before the deadline to do so. That annoys me.
How much, because I think it's a very fair, I want to be upfront about it. How much would you like me to say is how that system evolves or doesn't throughout the game in terms of the timing?
I'll figure it out.
Okay. But I understand that frustration here. As you mentioned, we do find out later in the week that there are people to save. So it benefits.
Yeah.
But yeah, tonight is a really weird night because there is almost nothing to do. Mm-hmm. And so it does feel like, oh, this would probably be a pretty good night to go to Tartarus. So if you are breaking Tartarus up, if you are not the like, let me just go for 40 level, whatever it is, 20.
Yeah, that's fair. That's legitimate.
That I think makes a little bit more sense here. But yeah, it is a really quiet night.
Yeah.
So you worked part-time?
I just worked part-time.
I did the same. The only thing I want to mention, I did, you can have a fun conversation with Aegis that night, where basically at the end, she's talking about her prowess in Tartarus. So I don't know if you could go or you couldn't go that night, but it's very funny. Oh no, you can't go to Tartarus that night, actually. That is also a thing. You actually can't go that night.
Oh, gotcha.
At least
right, because there's dark hour stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but so it's really funny because Aegis is like, I'm good. You want me in combat? I can like riddle enemies with bullets. Like I can just unleash hell. I'm like, all right, cool. We'll see. But yeah, as you mentioned, there is a dark hour segment. Spookiness, It appears. Yeah. We get a little surprise in the middle of the week, which I do appreciate the sort of randomness of a moment like this because you are on that full moon expectation. So it really throws you off. But you get this sudden call from Ghost Fuka. Fuka appears in your mental state and wakes you up to let you know that she has detected a shadow in the city, and so we all gather in the control room. And that's of course weird because while it just seems to be a regular shadow, it's outside of Tartarus, which is strange. It shouldn't be happening as far as they know. So that really scares them. But don't worry, Akihiko's already gone out to handle it, and perfect timing, we get a call from him about handling it. And he mentions that we should all come. Not because he's in trouble. The shadow was already actually defeated by the time he got there. And I love that they're hiding it. And like, obviously I knew going in, but then you get the surprise of it because he's like...
And I knew the second it happened. I was like, they said shrine, and I was like, oh, I know what's going on
Says
here.
the shrine, he's like, this little fella took a hit. And so he wants to help someone out. Who could it be? And of course you get there. And devastatingly, Koromaru is in a puddle of blood.
It's very sad.
Like, unfortunately, I realize for people with maybe sensitivities to moments like this, we do have to go over it. Obviously, if you've played it in the game. A pretty startling sight to see. Koromaru is alive. They are not, gone, but they are very badly hurt because they took on that shadow pretty much themselves and were able to take it out. But they were injured and hurt, defeated it, and apparently is a Persona user, is the understanding that they seem to have there.
So Ikutsuki does this whole thing telling you about why Aegis has to look like a human being, because only the persona comes from having the humanity, and they had to give the robots the human. Oh wait, a dog can use person. Never mind. Dog can use persona. Don't worry about it, people. Dog can use persona. Like what?
He has to like put in his notebook. Has to look like a person or a dog. Those are the two options.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I saw this coming a million miles away because they use Koromaru in all the marketing material and it's in the opening, but it's still, I'm glad it's happening. I'm glad that Koromaru has come back after that first little introduction.
Yes. And you also get the little added benefit of, I know you were talking about like who is Koromaru, what are their abilities, like what is underlying, are they a person who we haven't seen or whatnot? And at least right now, Aegis can understand dog speak is how it is presented to us. As Aegis can basically understand dogs. And it's very silly, but I actually really like the explanation where they're like, you can understand his language or whatever. And Aegis is like, it's not a language, but he's clearly telling me other things. Like I can understand him.
She can read the body language signals, etc., that he's sending off. It's not like she's literally speaks dog.
Yes. Yeah. So it's very cute. I do like that explanation. It is a very sad sight to see because we want our little buddy who we've only known for a day to be okay. And luckily, Mitsuru, at midnight, is like, I can get a vet. Don't you worry. I got this.
If anyone could, it would be her.
Oh, yeah.
She probably owns the vet.
The Korijo vet. Yeah, naturally.
the Korijo group vet.
So that all
marred by
happened.
controversy 6 years ago when an
Oh, boy. Yeah, they're actually embroiled in, like, the animal testing crises in the real world. It's commentary there. Yeah, anyway, that all happens, and then it's just like, well, good foundation setting,
home.
But we got a track meet to prepare for, my guy. Because it gets to July 30th, and just immediately you're thrown into track practice. It's not even like a small follow-up there. It is just, let's go for track practice.
This game loves to do that, doesn't it? It loves to just give you these wild, big things, and then just move on. Hey, there's a robot on your team now. I guess go garden with her? I don't know. You got track meet.
Yeah, you got stuff to do. Hey, there's a dog that has a persona. Anyway, run. Yeah, so that happens. Yuko notes you're doing well during the training.
Right.
That's about all I got. And then you get home and it's the evening. In terms of conversations, I'll let you get to any potential Ken update. I do just want to, of course, mention, for those who might not have seen, you do learn, if you talk to everyone, that Koromaru is stable and in care. There is no internal damage, but it was severe pain nonetheless.
Right.
So he is recovering and being treated for, which is wonderful to hear. And yeah, I have a couple other things, but what about you? Any updates for us?
There's a conversation I'm going to use as a pop quiz with Junpei, so we'll get to that one later.
Okay.
But then you can pick up the Taiyaki, and in this time you actually get the Taiyaki, and then also Yukari gives you Umugi water. Yeah, so she gives you water, and I think the exact note, I wrote this down for a potential pop quiz, I said not to use it, is for all your hard work on your club activities. I guess she means like she's giving you water for the track meet.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I will say it happens a little bit throughout this week in some of the conversations with Yukari especially. They really appreciate that you are doing extracurricular activities. Like
they support you.
Yeah, they think it is a really worthwhile endeavor to do. They have their own, they have archery, and so it's clearly something that matters to them, and they're just trying to show that, like, hey, I appreciate that you're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. What'd you do for the evening?
I read with Fuka again. I specifically
did the same.
read. Yeah, and I specifically did it because it said, do you want to continue reading this sci-fi series with Fuka? And I was like, yeah, I want to continue this topic. And you talk about the challenges of recommending books to other people. It's just, it's nice that I love that these little interactions are sequential in like a very real way.
Yeah, it's nice to have follow through. I think there are some with the movies and TV shows that you can watch with the cooking stuff. I very much so specifically this week had like an almost end cap to a Yukari cooking kind of like mini-sode thing. But yeah, I read with Fuka this week, and something else happened for me as a result of this. But if it didn't happen for you, I kind of want to wait till it happens for you. It is a thing you will encounter, and people who have played the game will know about it. But I kind of just don't want to go into it if you don't know what it is.
From reading?
Yes. It is understandable it didn't happen to you, so don't think you did anything wrong.
Okay, now I'm... Okay. No,
But-
I don't think anything happened to me.
Okay.
That I
You
remember.
would remember. We would have a very specific
Okay.
thing or two to talk about.
Okay, then no.
Okay. I would just say... I don't even know if I should say anything. Anyway, you're hanging out with people. Just keep hanging out. So yeah, anyway, a thing happened for me that people will know about if they've played. And if not, I'm excited to see what happens when you do. But anyway, moving on from there. The dark hour happens again, and it's just our boy Pharos coming by.
I literally did not leave any notes in this section beyond Pharaohs. I think he literally doesn't say anything except, hey, there's 7 days again, and walks away.
He mentions how, like, it's so lively around the place because of all the new faces, but that's pretty much it. There's no commentary in a deeper way. He just goes, hey, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of people here, but I'm still your friend. Oh, he also says he's not been too worried about us lately.
Oh, good.
Which is just a funny thing to say. Anyway.
We can move right along.
It happens and you move on to July 31st, which is track practice. Wow. Yep. Who could have predicted? I beat my record. I don't know about you, but it says I beat my record and I was second on the team.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I went backwards. They were like worried about me.
It's fair. It is that funny thing of like, in my head, I did have that momentary panic of, did I need to have done something to get first here? And then I was just like, oh no, it's just the week plays out. We're fine.
Yeah.
You move on from there and it's the evening once again. We're back.
And now we have the second episode of What's the Deal with Ken?
What's the deal? What's the deal? Yeah, go for it. What's the deal with Ken?
He's sitting at a table reading a magazine. And I looked over his shoulder and I went, is this elementary schooler reading a fashion magazine? And if you look at the front, it's called Vivid. It's kind of like, I assume it's like supposed to be like Vogue, right? That sort of thing. And yeah, he's just flipping through the pages of like a straight up fashion magazine, which means I imagine they only had one magazine asset is the only thing I can pull from that.
I was going to say, given the Foo Fighters thing, I wouldn't be shocked if this is just like a low poly warp of a Vogue magazine from 2009.
Yeah.
You could also have a fun conversation with him where he wonders what y'all are doing staying up so late.
This is episode 2 of episode 3 of What's the Deal with Ken, and they get progressively like, what is the more? And we'll hit the last one, I think, literally tomorrow.
Yeah, I do love the last one, but it's really funny that he does that. And you can mess with him. You can kind of brush it aside. I told him that we study, and he's like, wow, you guys are really busy, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really cute conversation that you can poke fun at him for not knowing what the adults do because he goes to bed early.
Exactly. Akutsuki is also around. Just hanging out as he has occasionally. You can do a little bit of a pet pun with him and he gets really excited about it.
Yeah, that the pun he's going to say or whatever.
Exactly. But that's pretty much it. So what'd you do for the evening?
I spent time with Mutatsu and it didn't get a rank up. I just spent some time with him.
Cool. I made food with Yukari. So like I said, this kind of ended a sort of 3-part mini, or it feels like it was the ending of it. It sort of like came back to the first thing. I actually don't remember if there's more to it, but it feels like it sort of neatly progresses where we've been so far, keeps up that fun conversation of cooking. And like last night with Fuka, I had another thing happen that people will know if they've played. And I will say, especially for people who know related to Yukari, they will probably be pretty happy I got it now before going back into Tartarus, and that's all I'll say.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from there. August 1st. We're in a new month. A new day has dawned, and it's track practice again. But you get the fastest time.
You're even faster.
Incredible. I mean, hey, at this rate, we should be able to be like the Flash if we just went another week or two.
I wish learning to run quickly was this easy in real life.
Right? Yeah. I get winded walking up a small hill in San Francisco, and here's the main character just becoming the fastest man in the world. Anyway, you have that happen. That's your day. What'd you do in the evening?
On the final episode of What's the Deal with Ken, you can have a conversation with this kid who's sitting on the couch, sipping a cup of something, and you talk to him, and he immediately starts telling you about how he believes that he likes his coffee completely straight black, and he thinks that adding milk and sugar to it is for children. And so it's the summer, which means that it doesn't get dark until at least 8 p.m., which means that this elementary school age kid, maybe middle school if we're being generous, is sitting on a couch at 8:30 at night drinking black coffee with no adults?
There's no one to watch him. Yeah.
What? I thought giving Red Bull to a kid his age was bad. What's going on here?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Wait till he starts drinking Four Locos in a week or two. It's kind of nuts.
This was my moment that I really started liking Ken. Because he is such a, like, not weirdo. He's just he's very clearly like a little mature for his age.
Sure.
But also still a kid. Like, you get a lot about him in the conversations this week of him being obsessed with Akihiko and not really understanding what you guys do when you're staying up late. But then also, you know, he's a refined sort of kid. He is not a baby either.
Yeah.
Like, the difference between personality between him and Maiko is very stark, right? Maiko is like a little girl, and he's like a kid, but he's sort of come into his own a little bit already. And I'm sure that's partly because of his tragic backstory about his parents and how he's had to mature quickly and all that. But also, I'm razzing him for these things across this week, but really it's because I do like him a lot, and those moments make me like him a lot.
No, absolutely. For what it's worth, I am not reading, I don't think anyone at home would or should, but I'm not reading you pointing these things out as like a negative to Ken. I think it is just like, we're finally starting to get some characterization of him and get a little bit of idea who he is. And I agree with you. I think it is like the precocious level is not, it's not dipping into the annoying side, which is one of the hardest things to do when you put a younger character, even with teens. I think like there are untold television shows that have tried to put younger kids in, and it just doesn't work when they're thrown into the mix. And here he's obviously at enough of an age gap that it matters. He has a different experience in life right now, but he is not, even if he is trying to act more mature, he's not doing it in a way that's grating or makes you roll your eyes, at least so far. If anything, it is silly in an amusing and endearing way.
Yeah. Someone just take the coffee away from him. Just take the coffee away.
Yeah, for the best, probably. I think at this age, I was maybe having coffee once a week on Saturday mornings, heavily weighed down with milk and sugar. Like, I would taste coffee and be like, this is disgusting. You drink this every day, Mom and Dad? And then I would just be like, oh, I could use a little caffeine while I watch Pokemon and the rest of the WB Saturday morning lineup, but I need all the sugar in it as possible.
In the words of Ken, you child.
I was, but now I only drink black coffee. It's actually really hard for me to go back to sweet coffees most of the time.
Well, how you've matured. Now
truly
you're the same maturity as Ken.
It's fair to say Ken and I are basically the same. Yeah, maturity level. I think that's fair. Just look at the shelves behind me. Anyway, that happens. You have those fun conversations. Did you say what you did this evening?
I hung with Tanaka. I got him up to 7, so I'm almost done with that.
Nice. For what it's worth, I am super behind on that, but we can always talk about it earlier because I did finish it in my first run.
I'm not in a rush.
Sure. I planted with Junpei because I just want the plant bonuses. Just give them to me.
Cool.
So yeah, I did that. Moving on. August 2nd. It's time. The track meet is here.
Yeah.
And now, Tom, before we get into the track meet itself, I do have a question for you because my brain is broken from the act of having played this game so recently in full, and also just now playing occasionally with a podcast, occasionally just like a little bit distracted here or there, or taking notes in a way that I didn't before. Is this the first time this track plays, this music track?
Oh, I don't remember.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, what I really, really love this music track because it is essentially this more ethereal version. It's really a gorgeous track that I really, really love.
I did not. I'm sorry, I didn't notice the music for this one this time. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I meant to look up the name before we started recording, and then I completely forgot because I had to walk my dog. But I really, really love this music and how it pops in to this. And I think it's just a really, again, the way the game takes its familiar themes and uses them in different ways in the music, I think is really well done here. Anyway,
yeah.
Moving on from there, the track meet begins. You are in the stands with Miyamoto and Yuko. They're, there to support you, be behind you, all that sort of stuff, give you support in any way they can.
Miyamoto's like your hype man.
Yeah, yeah. Yuko gives you an item, right?
Maybe.
I have that written down. Maybe I miswrote something. I was getting a lot of autocorrect in my notes on this day. It was very frustrating. Nothing to do with the game. Miyamoto gives us this pep talk. So it goes really well, like the actual meet itself. It is our fastest time here, is what I meant to say. But this guy, Hayase, still wins. This fabled runner. I was going to say, I don't know running. Usain Bolt, I guess, would be.
Yeah, Usain Bolt is that is the cultural reference you were reaching for.
I think that's probably where I want to go. It's the Olympics are going on, and I'm like, I'm a Winter Olympics kind of guy. I don't.
Sure.
So anyway, Hayase still wins, but we have an incredible time. We clearly put on a strong showing. We're really, really good. So good, in fact, that he comes up to us after the meet and compliments us on our speed.
We've earned his respect.
Yes. It's very much like you haven't defeated the big rival of yours, but you guys are going to be friends in the sequel. So he actually asks to hang out and says that we have potential. He kind of wants us to help push him, basically.
Yeah, it's a very funny way to shoehorn another person, like another social link in, but, sure, fine.
It works. He's usually at the strip mall, so we'll see him then. I don't think he does, but I think it would have been really funny. He was like, I'm usually at the strip mall on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, except for when there are exams or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he says he's usually there, just tells us his name, and we meet him. Seems like we're going to be friends now if we want to be. But the others are really surprised. Miyamoto is actually really upset about this. He wants us to go meet him and yell at him, put him in his place.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how their relationship goes. And then we also learn that some guy from Third High has gone missing.
Not very cleverly named.
No. We wonder if it's like apathy syndrome going on, whatever it may be. Who knows? That's kind of the implication here of cases being on the rise, which I think comes up in conversation over these few days as we get to the full moon.
Right, yeah, because that's always the case.
Yes, and so that comes up a little bit. I think it's just a nice way to show how this impacts the events that you're dealing with, so it feels actually a part of your world beyond the full moon once a month. But yeah. That happens. That's the track meet. I don't really have much else to say about the track meet. I don't know about you.
No, it's cute. It's a fun little thing. I don't mind getting another social link like this. The Hayase guy seems neat enough. I like this sort of rival dynamic with the running that he wants you to push him. Yeah, it's just sort of. I think that this scene would be great if it wasn't preceded by like 7 days of inexplicable training scenes. It had a little bit of buildup that didn't match the payoff, but at the same time, yeah, it's fine.
No, that's fair. It is a thing that because it takes a full week, you're like, oh, this must be impactful in a way.
Yeah,
like maybe something's going to
sort of not.
Yeah.
I wish I had more agency. I wish I had any agency in it, but
I wish it was a mini game where I was just slamming my controller against the table to get the buttons pressed.
Literally, yes.
I do want to say, just because we're here and I'm thinking of it, we are now 5 months into the game or so. We're still getting new social links. How deep into the game do you think you are getting new social links?
Oh, until the day before the last day. Yeah, I think this game will never stop giving us social links.
Okay, fair enough. I was just curious if you had a.
That's at least the vibe I get, is that especially with the way that the party member social links open up late, I'm willing to bet that they just keep going.
That's fair. So we'll find out. But I was thinking like, wow, this is pretty far in, and yeah, it's a new social link.
It is, especially a social link that's like not a person that goes to your school. It's not related to much. Like
absolutely, yeah. But hey, more people to hang out with as we go.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, you get back home. Mitsuru compliments you when you get back. Is just really proud of your accomplishments, kind of like, as you were saying earlier, Yukari is also as well. That like the group in general is just very like, hey, it's really great that you did this. It's so cool that you're doing this commitment. You're balancing so much right now. Like, that must be a ton to take on, but you're doing it so well. We're smart little boys getting our treats for our exams. We're getting second at the track meet. We're doing the dark hour. We got a lot going on. We're successful in the game and real life too. It's all going great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no one's upset that you got second. Like, not even Mitsuru is giving you any sort of disappointed grief or anything. Everyone's just very proud of you. It's all very supportive.
Yeah. The only thing that I want to mention here was, as I was mentioning earlier about like the importance of extracurriculars to some of the group, is Yukari kind of uses the moment to dig at Junpei for basically not having any.
Right.
So much so that if you go talk to her after, that's what her conversation is about that night. She's actually kind of annoyed that Junpei isn't doing more, that he's not taking advantage of his free time. And it's just a very funny, like, it's not rivalry is the wrong word, but like the somewhat animosity that is always kind of lingering there doesn't go away even as things kind of go up and down in waves, it feels like.
Not leader material, Junpei.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that all happens, and then you have a free night. You're not too tired from the track meet, which honestly, if they told you were, I would have believed them. But what did you do?
I hung out with Mutatsu. I got him up to 7, so now both of my evening confidants are at 7.
Nice. Very good. Well, I planted with Igus. Because some of the friendships...
another thing.
No, not yet, but... God, I really don't want to say anything, but...
I'm going to hang out with Yukari next time I can, so
cool,
don't worry about
cool.
it.
Moving on from there, we get to our last day of this little bit of an extended week, August 3rd. And as you mentioned earlier, Elizabeth tells us more people are stuck in that gosh darn Tartarus and you need to help them get free. Silly kids wandering where they shouldn't be. And you got to go rescue them. So apologies if you've done all of Tartarus beforehand, but hey, you should go back in. But before you do that, you get free time. So what'd you do during the day?
I did some shopping. I kind of prepared because I knew I was going to Tartarus that night, and did some selling, did some shopping, bought some new weapons and stuff. You know, that sort of thing. Went to the police station and bought a robot arm like you do. And then I hung out with Maiko, so I got her up to rank 5.
I also got her up to rank 4, but yeah, hung out with her.
Nice.
And I think we had a synchronous day because you and I both went to Tartarus on this evening.
Yes.
So, let's talk about it. You have a new look in Tartarus. You've got a new teammate. There is a fair bit to talk about here in relation to the last one, certainly.
Yeah, starting with the look, I'm very glad that this was not a recolor.
Yeah.
I'm a little torn on the look in that I love it visually, this sort of cyberpunk factory vibe with these staircases that move, and it's all really, really cool looking, especially after sort of the grotesque faces in the walls of the last area. The reason I'm a little torn on it is because it's a little annoying to navigate the rooms. There's lots of walls, and there's lots of orange lights that look kind of like the things you're supposed to break at about the same height at the things you're supposed to break that are not them, like all in the walls and stuff. So it's really easy. I'm sure this will simplify as I, go through it a bunch and kind of get used to reading it better. But there's a lot of visual blocks and clutter that make just sprinting through it a little bit more difficult, which I guess is probably also partially intentional. But yeah, so I'm a little torn, but ultimately I really, really like this section and the way it looks.
Yeah, the industrial look of it, I really appreciate. And in the same way, though, agree with you of the visual noise can be distracting. For me, what stands out is I even wrote it down. I was looking at my mini map so much during this section because you have those rooms that might have 4 different ways to go, or they have little divots that you need to go around, and there might be a little thing tucked away in a corner. You might have the hallway that you can go down that has like one section to go around here, one section just as you go in. It has a lot of those repeating patterns that are cool to see, but I was very much like, let me just keep trekking along on what this little map is telling me, and occasionally I'll look at the space in front of me, which isn't ideal.
And they're all very similar, those rooms. If you're just looking at them, it's hard to tell at a glance whether it's the one with the little staircase path up or yada yada yada.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, a thing I noticed is it's really easy in this section, or in this area of Tartarus, to come out of a battle and not know which direction you're supposed to be walking, because you don't really remember or know which direction you came from, and you got to pull up the map and figure out again, okay, that's where I was.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I'm with you though. Like, I do think it's a cool look and a less oppressive, I guess, than the last area. Not that I dislike. I think the
less grim.
Yes, the ominous nature of that last area works very well, but this feels a little bit more like we're working here, literally and metaphorically, for the industrial feel of it. It's like we are pushing through this factory kind of setting, and I think it works pretty well overall here, for sure.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to talk about with Tartarus specifically beyond, like, Aegis and these doors that they introduce, pretty much.
So yeah, I wanted to mention the Great Clock, the Monad Door and Passage, and I think Aegis, who I assume you brought into battle.
Yeah.
We can start with let's start with Aegis, just to, new party member. They are gun focused. That is their main thing. Their persona doesn't even really have elemental attacks. It is more of the physical attacks and some of the defensive moves. And so it's a lot for them about HP management is a big thing when it comes to them. And just to, because I want to hear your thoughts, but just to mention, the Theurgy is essentially, they go on autopilot, they do a big move, and then for 3 or 4 moves, they are just auto attacking with a giant attack that you can't do anything about. So,
right.
How did you feel about using Aegis?
Yeah, I like her thematically a lot. And I like that she has a gun arm. It's a cool gimmick, right, for her. I like her Theurgy a lot, that she can just have these 3 turns of attacking everybody really high damage, and then she pays for that. But if you kill everybody before then, it's all upside. So I like that. I like having to think about using that. I think the fact that she didn't have any sort of element of her own limits her usefulness on my lineup, if that makes sense. It is unfortunate, I guess, that she didn't just have, like, a bless move or something, right? Or, like, just one, even if it was one other people had, even if it was just like, also she can do fire, I would have been a little bit or a little happier with using her. But it's not like she wasn't effective. It's just I value having that flexibility of having lots of different options and people I can pass to for different elemental effects. And so I like her a lot thematically. I do think she might not make my party cut as much as I would want her to, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's fair. That very much was my first impression. I'm going to commit this time around because I didn't use her as much as others in my last go. I am going to try to use her more in this playthrough, but I am with you in terms of I really value a diversity of elements, and I feel like I can have the physical attacks covered. So I'm interested to actually try using her to see what the benefits of someone who, to be fair, does a lot of attacks to all enemies at once and is more focused on physical, and in a way that you really need to be conscious of HP in a different way. I'm curious to see how that can become beneficial. So I am going to try, but I'm with you in terms of it's not at first glance, not what I would gravitate toward.
The other thing that I could see with her is she also has a focus on buffs and debuffs. And I essentially, and this was true in basically every run of P5 I've done, I found single target buffs and debuffs, especially buffs, single target buffs especially, I just didn't ever want to use because they take so much time for such a small payoff overall. But as soon as those buffs and debuffs start being all enemies or all allies, they really go up in value in my eyes. So if later in the game she starts getting buffs and debuffs that are all people, or like Tetrakarn or Makarakarn or like something like that that's like a little bit more high impact support moves, I'd absolutely be happy using her. But initially just giving like one person defense up is like not something I'm super thrilled about.
No, same. I think I did it in 5 and do it here. The single person buffs and debuffs, I ignore almost completely. I'm like, this is a waste of time, as you were saying.
I use them sometimes. The thing I use most probably is evasion down on enemies, because if there's particularly slippery enemies, lowering their accuracy and evasion can actually be very effective against like a specific hard boss, or like the rare shadow with the
little hands.
Yeah. But other than that, I think you and I are on the same page.
For sure. So I want to level them up because I would like to see what that power scale looks like. Because it is very easy to know with someone who does fire moves, they're going to get better fire moves and probably support moves that boost fire damage. Yeah. I want to see what a person with this skill set does at a higher level, because I don't know. I genuinely really just never gravitated toward that with P5 either. So,
sure.
Yeah. But I totally get where you're coming from.
Thankfully, they make it easier to keep characters that you're not going to play with as leveled.
They do. Thank you for that wonderful segue to the Great Clock, which as you are leaving, I didn't write down what floor it happens. I do believe this one is a scripted occurrence.
It's pretty early.
Yeah. But you get toward the end of a level and suddenly this Great Clock face has kind of jammed its way into the just before the exit of a floor. You can kind of walk up to it and touch it, and you go into this liminal space that is similar to the entryway and has a clock that is similar to the one down there that refills your HP and SP. But this one fills levels.
Yay!
You get to eat a bunch of rare candy and level up your characters really quickly.
And it lets you pick 2, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, this was we were talking earlier on, I almost blurted it out when we were talking about in terms of how you like manage your party levels and all of that. And this is a really great solve for, hey, if you rely on certain people, but eventually you're going to get to some area that it's like, oh, I never use Mitsuru, but it would be great to have an ice person here. You can keep them largely leveled up. And so, as you were saying, this will, you're allowed to choose 2 party members when you go in here, and you can up their level to, I believe, your player character level.
Yeah, I think that's what it did.
They matched there. I have read some stuff, and actually Dexter even asked about this in the Patreon, so I would appreciate some clarification out there, because I have read some pages that say this and some that don't. I do believe you need to use that party member during that Tartarus run to have this take effect.
I knew you had to use them at least once. But yeah, that makes sense that you have to use them on the same run.
It might carry over. That might be, so like, please don't take that definitive. I was reading some that were like, you have to use it before you leave. And then some others are like, the next time you use them, they'll level up. So it might just be the next time you use them, they level up. But this allows them to get to a much higher level, much more quickly. So you do not have to grind so laboriously to get a useful party member up, which is really nice. It is a really handy tool.
Very handy in I think every JRPG, or just every RPG with a party, a large party in general, should have some sort of catch-up mechanic if they don't share XP, when they're not in the party. It's just so handy. And it's just such a feel-good sort of thing, because falling behind on somebody just because, for whatever reason, is this this positive feedback loop of, oh, I don't use them, so they've fallen behind, and now they've fallen behind, so I'm not going to use them as much, and then you just neglect them. So having something to catch somebody up is great.
Yeah, it is, to your point, super helpful in a way that I think all RPGs, when you are considering a party, need to have some way to help you keep the rest of your party leveled up. I know Pokemon tries certain things with XP share and all that, and there's a whole bunch of different ways people try stuff. I like the use of this as you do have to, obviously make a choice of who matters to you, of who you want to level up. So like, if you're bringing a party member along who's lower leveled, maybe you don't worry about them as much. It's a cool little thing.
Yeah.
And it's especially good to have everyone leveled up high, because you might get to a monad door or passage that is really tough.
What another great segue.
So you get to the first thing we get are monad doors, which are these big, ominous 2-paneled doors with a little squiggly down the middle that you go into. And honestly, even more liminal space-wise, you enter a place that has no map, that is off the charts. No one knows what's going on here. You're lost in the ether of the Dark Hour and Tartarus. And you end up fighting particularly difficult enemies for the chance to get good rewards.
Right.
And also by doing so, it, I believe, reveals the pathway of that entire floor.
And the one above it.
And the one above. Which is only so good for me because I typically almost explore a full floor before I engage with any of the big stuff. So I many times would find the monad door as my last thing, and I was like, well, that doesn't matter, but okay.
But that's why you get above, too.
Yeah, which is nice, which is actually really helpful. But yeah, so you have these tougher battles, which I would say probably are on the level of like getting to the next kind of border floor, you know?
Yeah, kind of. It's the gatekeeper people.
Yeah, which also, I forget when it happens here. I forget if it's related to a door or a boss, but we also get the introduction of a really useful Fuka ability, the Sylphid Aura. Which,
right, yeah, that's I think when you get to that first person.
And that ups your defense and evasion, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, you go into the battle with those 2 buffs for your whole team.
Yeah.
And it's only like 25 SP. It's like really pretty reasonable.
It's good. It is a super helpful thing. I use them for almost every one of these battles. I guess before, just to jump to you for your thoughts, you then also, if you got to the top of this section of Tartarus, which I assume you did.
Yep.
The section right before it, the floor right before the end, I think, you get to a door that is a monad passage, which seems to be even more difficult, you're hinted at. The monad doors, it's worth noting, disappear if you leave Tartarus. The passages will be there if you come back. So if you get to a passage and it is too difficult for you, you can always come back. And I would recommend doing it because there is usually a lot of really good loot.
Yeah, I didn't even try this one and you have to have the major arcana to open the door, right?
Yes.
I didn't even try this one because it was right after the boss, like the final boss of this area, which was a twofer. It was 2 in a row, right?
Yeah.
And I hadn't had the chance to save yet, and I could have teleported back and then gone there again, but I just sort of was like, if these are always going to be here, I'll just come next time I'm in Tartarus, I'll just do it, right? It's fine. Yeah. So I like that. I like that there's this added challenge. I also didn't know how hard they would be, because like, you remember Persona 5 Strikers, they introduced a similar thing where there are these super lightning enemies in certain levels, and those guys are impossibly hard the first time you encounter them. They are absolutely not meant to be beaten right away.
I would say these are probably in a very similar vein where it was maybe 50-50. I could beat some of these my first go around in my original playthrough and some where I would just have to come back. So no shame to anyone who's like, I need to peace out. I'll come back next time. I did that this time. I was like you, depleted. Most of my SP was gone. I used a lot of items. I was like, let me not do this to myself right now. It's been a long Tartarus trip. I'm not going to suffer like that. And that's okay.
Yeah. But I generally speaking, I am very into the idea of them throwing more monkey wrenches into Tartarus. Just things to break it up, things to make you chase or, make decisions about, do I want to go for this fight this time or do I not? Or, get more unique fights. Also, the monad doors give you an Arcana card almost every time, right? Like they're more likely to give you an Arcana card in the shuffle time after that fight. So I like that there's more ways to control all of this, because there's also, now I'm seeing, I still took every Arcana card I saw this time, but I'm now seeing how getting offered that Arcana card that just ups that social link fusion bonus you get. Like if you're trying to grind and really, up yourself and get ready for a big fight, probably you're not going to take that one when it's offered to you. So I appreciate that I'm starting to see a little bit more of the thought and the strategy in Tartarus.
Oh yeah, you'll get somewhere it's like, okay, I could take this card that gives me an Amrita soda or whatever, or I can wait to get the one that ups the XP I'm getting or whatever it ups the whole time. It's like, I'm going to wait now. You actually have
Right.
choices to make, it would add a nice little complexity there. But yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend going to do the Monad passages eventually. They are useful. The loot you get is pretty handy. It is definitely worth doing as you largely go along. I don't want to say too much more about that. We can talk about it after we've beaten the final Monad, or the first Monad passage, forgive me, just to talk about the loot reward side of it, but
Sure.
worth doing. Yeah.
Cool.
I think those are all the big things for this section. I'm trying to remember, but it's a lot of new stuff, fun complexities to add to it. I hope it's keeping it still somewhat fresh for you as we now are getting into the 60s or so floors, right?
Yeah. I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah.
Hooray.
That's Tartarus. Let us know what you're thinking about this new section. And we'll read some comments next week. But yeah, that was our final night of this slightly longer but pretty quick week of Persona 3 Reload. Speaking of, I do think I have a slight addendum to what next week's schedule will be, but we'll get there at the end. Before we move on, Tom, I'll throw it to you. Do you want to talk about Miyamoto this week, or should we move it for next week?
I think we're going to bump him another week.
Apologies to Miyamoto. Kaz, we'll talk about you next week.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, before we wrap up, I do just have a couple comments from over at patreon.com/takeyourtime, because we do want to take our time to talk about you guys. So thank you everyone out there for writing in. I did mention Dexter had even asked about that question about the Great Clock. Please let us know if anyone has a more definitive answer. I've literally read guides that said yes it does and guides that don't mention it. So I am in pain. Moving on from there, Brody just said, and I guess I'll just read this out as a PSA for everyone. I just said, remember to save up your damage gems.
Is that like the items that deal a different type of elemental damage?
Yes.
Yeah, those are super useful.
They are. They are so handy, especially when you get like a group of 4 and it's a thing you don't have access to until the next like 4 people go. Super handy. I did just want to read that one. Francis also made a comment about the track meet. They said, I think the running competition is lame. I hated it during my first playthrough and still do not like it since it took away the days for social links, which are kind of hard to complete. I am playing Persona 5 Royale. I almost said, no, it's Persona 5 Royal. I'm so tired, Tom. What's happened to me? Can I tell you? Oh, it's so funny. I'm not going to
Never mind. Let's go back and talk about Miyamoto. Let's just draw this out.
Hey, we can. You're going to... I like as a punishment to Francis. It's like, oh, you hate the track meet? Let's talk about the track team. Anyway, said I'm playing Persona 5 Royal again, and the Persona 5 Royal Summer Vacation felt much better than the Reload. I think that's fair. I think on a 1-to-1.
Big agree.
Yeah. Do you actually want to talk about him, or are you?
No. I'm just messing with you.
Dan also then just had a few questions for us. The first one was, have you thought about whether you'll do the answer or episode Aegis, as it's been renamed, for Reload after we do the main campaign? I think the short answer is yes, but that's a like...
Yep. Probably. It comes out in September, I think.
It comes out in September. I do believe it is not going to be a problem for us. I don't think it gets like inserted earlier in the campaign.
I'd hope not.
I'll double check when it comes out. If we run into an issue, we'll just figure out a way to talk about it. If it's set after the game, I don't know if we'll wait to do it or just do it right after in case there's a time jump. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I think
I think the general plan is probably yes. We're gonna try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. I think it's very much considered, to my understanding, a pretty important aspect of the story for a lot of people. So I think we will definitely cover it. Non-serious follow-up. Do you plan to do it in real time? Again, I'll look into it, and once we figure out what it is, I guess also please don't spoil it for us in the comments. Please be chill. Don't.
I like if that's a non-serious follow-up because it takes place over like 100 years.
So episode Aegis ends in 2097. How are you guys going to cover that? Don't.
Yeah, I don't know that. So to be clear, I do not know the structure of what that is. So we'll figure it out.
Neither do I, but I plan to play it when it comes out. So please don't ruin that for me, because we will have that answered. And if it creates a problem, it creates a problem. We'll figure it out.
Yep.
We trust y'all. You'll, I'm not too worried. Anyway, I'd be interested in hearing about your persona setup for the main character. Do you have one or two go-tos that you've kept around for a while, or just whatever you can fuse at La Casa de Igor? Tom, I was curious to hear, especially now that we've gone through a whole nother chunk, what is your persona rotation like these days?
My rotation is just having some random dudes for social links when I'm not in Tartarus, and then right before I go into Tartarus, when I go into Tartarus, I condense down as much as I can while having each of the main elements on someone, is basically what I do. And I don't pay attention very specifically to who is on what, as long as I can maintain that goal. The character I've been using right now more than I expected to is Captain Kidd, because I have the deluxe edition or whatever. So I have Ryuji's persona.
I was like, how are you doing that?
But I didn't buy it for free, because this is the difference. I think in Persona 5, the DLC ones you could craft, but they were all like way later or like harder to craft. These ones just sort of like, they just mix in the P5 personas.
Interesting.
Just in the middle. So they're stronger. They all have this ability that's like, Captain Kidd has one has an ability that's like electric attacks deal 75% more damage. It's like way stronger. But they're also not, they don't have what the P5 bonus characters had, which is like one ability that's just absolutely busted OP and you could get way earlier. So I feel less bad about just crafting into them or fusing into them. And I've been using Captain Kidd for a little while, but I think I'm going to get rid of him at some point.
That's
soon-ish too.
I just on the DLC one, I don't have them for this, but I remember that in P5, and I used one early and used one of those ridiculous moves, and it was like 3,000 damage, and I'm like, I'm like level 12. Why is that happening? It was like some crazy power balance.
It's frankly not a thing that I'm interested in doing.
Same.
Like even the 75% is even not even that huge of a deal, because I'm still just using Mazio to ping weaknesses, right? Yeah. So the added damage doesn't really matter when you're eventually just using an all-out attack. It feels different than those special abilities, which are really, really impactful.
Yeah.
Because again, it just feels like paying not to play the game to use those things, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like, why would you trivialize it? And if that's what you want to do, you just want to play on more of like an easy mode, that's fine. But I don't know. I don't really want to trivialize combat for myself that way by just buying all the highest level ones I can.
For sure. I think to your point, like if someone wants a get out of jail free card, I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And very much so. I probably once or twice will be in a match and be like, I just want this to be over, and would use one. But yeah, for the most part, I am very much along the same lines as you of my balance of how many I keep in versus condensing or letting the list grow. I was trying to be a little bit more conservative, I guess, or like save a few of them for emotional reasons, I guess. Like on my first playthrough, I tried to keep your original persona as long as I could.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that's your guy. You should keep them. That's what matters. And then they're like 30 levels lower, and it's just taken up a slot. So this time around, I have just been mashing these guys together over at Igor's place and just creating new ones. And all my monstrosities are just cycling through, and it's whatever. My
have
not
opinion
been precious.
Of that, yeah, and my opinion of that is that you could get really deep into really specifics of who you're using and why and what you're putting on them and all of that, and more power to you. But playing on the normal difficulty, I appreciate that you really don't have to think super hard about what you're combining into, as long as you're being good about, okay, I have somebody with healing, I got somebody with recarm, I got somebody with ice, fire, electricity, yada yada yada. That I appreciate that on the normal difficulty, it's not gonna make or break the game based on that, your choices there.
No, my
Again,
big priorities,
assuming you're keeping yourself rounded.
Of course. No, my big priorities are keep them roughly at the level I'm at. Obviously, you can't always be perfect there, so a few under is totally fine. But keep them around my level. make sure I have the array of abilities, as you mentioned, so that I can easily target weaknesses. And I think the only ones that I'm holding on to right now are the special fusions. So when you have to fuse three together, just because they're unique enough that I kind of like that. But that is the only one where I'm like, let me hold on to this for a little bit or try to level it up outside of the fusion process, just because it's fun in that way. But otherwise, we're just cycling through. They are acquaintances at best at this time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I will also say, I value ice and electricity much higher than the other elements, because those are the ones that can cause status effects that make the enemy not be able to move.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a very good call. And I definitely value light and dark, just because it's like right now, none of the other party members come close to that. So it's
definitely
always good to keep in your back pocket.
Definitely.
Also I have tried to keep through fusion or otherwise a combo of poison and the ability to up the likelihood of poison or status ailment effects, because poison can really do some good damage if you need it to.
Cool. That's good to know. Handy. I have not relied on poison very much, so that's good to know.
I think it's not also always held to the same like barrier as other status effects. So there are some of the harder bosses where it's like you can't charm them or enrage them or whatever. Like you can't do some of those, but you can poison them. And
good to know.
That becomes really handy as you get later in. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, those are all of the questions and comments I gathered. Thank you to everyone who wrote in and shared their thoughts. We always appreciate it. It is always great to hear from you all. And while you've heard from us for this last hour, we're about to wrap up. But before we do, Tom, hit us with that pop quiz.
All right. So this is a conversation with Junpei in the house or in the dorm on the day after you meet Koromaru. And Junpei very adorably says what we're all thinking, which is he's like, so a robot just joined the team, and then like a couple days later a dog joined the team. What is going on? What's next? Is it gonna be and he lists something as his goof of what crazy thing could join the team next as a Persona user. So I want to know what that thing is. What did he say? And I want to know what your best guess is, or your wildest guess. What would Junpei say?
Yeah, I can't believe he's like, and what's next? Conan O'Brien? And then just Conan's on the team. That would be a lot of fun. Anyway, if you have a real or fake or just ridiculous answer for Tom's pop quiz, you can write in over at patreon.com/takeyourtime, on the YouTube version of the show at youtube.com/Dornology. You can write in at dornology@gmail.com or find us on the social media web-sphere. I am at JM Dornbush and Tom is at Tom R. Marks. And occasionally we are online. But
Sometimes.
That is going to do us pretty much for this week's episode. Next week, I wrote down in the notes, it's going to be a slightly shorter week because it will make sense in the long run. We are going to do the days of August 4th through the 9th.
Okay.
Which is 6 days.
Yeah, okay.
But it will
we're just jumping back and forth.
We're just doing a little bit of switching, but it makes more sense, I think.
Okay.
So we're going to do that. We'll see how it goes. But that is going to do us for this week's episode. Tom, any parting thoughts?
No. Don't give Ken coffee.
Or Red Bull. Stop giving this kid caffeine. Let him live his life. And let him, as I hope you all out there, seize the day. We'll see you next week.